Hi, you're very welcome to our panel discussion on menopause in the workplace. My name is Karen Heavey. I'm the Health Promotion Manager in Dublin South, Kildare, West Wicklow. In the HSE, we've been running a number of workshops and focus groups on the menopause. The reaction from staff has been really good, and they're telling us they really want to find out more. So today we've organised a presentation from Loretta Dignam of the Menopause Hub, followed by a panel discussion with 4 HSE employees.
So just a little bit about me. My name is Loretta Dignam, as Karen said, founder and CEO of the Menopause Hub. At 49, I had what was to be my last period. I didn't know it was my last period until 12 months later. I very soon after that got hot flushes. And the only 2 things I knew about menopause were no periods and hot flushes. And I would consider myself to be reasonably intelligent, reasonably well educated, a sort of woman of the world, and yet I was blindsided by menopause. And 3 things struck me. Firstly, I felt I was way too young for this. Secondly, I knew nothing about it. None of my friends were speaking about it. And then the third thing was that I didn't dare mention this to my employers because I didn't want my employers to think of me as, over the hill, old, past it, and maybe not capable of doing my job. So I just struggled through for about 3 years. I'd never heard the word perimenopause, so I actually missed all those, well, I didn't miss the symptoms, I experienced the symptoms, but never knew they were connected to menopause, all those symptoms in my 40s. So in total, I probably had somewhere around 8 years of kind of feeling suboptimal in terms of my health. I really wished I'd known a lot more about menopause in my 40s and perimenopause. I could have avoided a lot of things. I could have had better quality of life, a better understanding of what was happening to me. And so, based on my own experience, I decided to set up the Menopause Hub. I set up Ireland's first centre of excellence for menopause. I started with a clinic in Mount Merrion. We have doctors, psychologists, women's health, physio, dietitian and nutritionist. And we believe in evidence-based information and treatment for women. So really what I want to talk to you about is why I think menopause matters. By 2030, there'll be 1.1 billion menopausal women on the planet. That will be 12.5% of the global population. And each year, 47 million newly menopausal women will come into that cohort. So a very large group. In Ireland, there's about 600,000 women who are menopausal, of whom about 350,000 are in paid employment. And it too is one of our faster growing demographics. So who are these menopausal women? Well, the average age of menopause when periods stop is 51. And the average age of perimenopause, the lead up to when the period stops, which happens in the 40s, is actually 45. So it isn't an older woman's condition like I thought. But these menopausal women are mothers, wives, partners, sisters, colleagues, friends, peers, direct reports, line managers, and so on. 50% of the world's population will go through menopause, and the other 50% may be impacted by it. And so every woman will experience menopause. Not every woman will experience pregnancy loss, fertility issues, and so on, but every woman will experience menopause. And when we asked women, to tell us about their experience of menopause, about 80% told us that they were unprepared for menopause. And I can vouch for that because I was one of those. 66% told us they knew little or nothing about menopause. And I would say that knowing about no periods and hot flushes is pretty much little or nothing. And about 79% of women told us that they thought the information services were poor or very poor. And when we asked women about their symptoms, and this is all research that was conducted by the Menopause Hub, because no data existed in Ireland, we had to rely on UK data all the time. 90% of women told us they had symptoms. 60% said that their symptoms were moderate, and 30% said that they were severe. So women can experience menopause on a continuum, if you like, from very little symptoms or no symptoms to debilitating. And when we asked women to tell us about their experience in the workplace, women told us that their performance was negatively impacted by menopause. About 50% of women told us that the menopausal symptoms impacted them a little at work, and 30% said that their symptoms impacted them a lot at work. So that's 80% in total, by the way. So when we asked women about, maybe taking time off work and so on, what we found is that almost 4 in 10 women took time off work due to their symptoms, and that 22% took 3 or more days off work. And 86% said they wouldn't dare tell the line manager the real reason for taking time off work. In fact, they'd rather say they had vomiting and diarrhea than mention menopause. 4 in 10 women told us that they considered giving up work. And in Ireland, that's 140,000 women considered giving up their jobs. And 11% actually gave up work. So that's about 38,500 women gave up work. There's a lot of women in the healthcare sector, and therefore to lose talent like this from the sector is a real crisis. When we asked women, about their confidence discussing menopause at work, 60% said they lacked confidence discussing menopause with their colleagues, and 70% said with their line managers. And when we asked women, what do they want to see from employers? 90% wanted training for HR and managers, and 95% wanted a menopause in the workplace policy. So you can see that women want this type of support in the workplace. So what is menopause? And I'm just going to give you a couple of slides very quickly about menopause. And menopause is sort of a catch-all phrase or word which describes various different stages. Now, during the course of this, we don't have a lot of time to go into symptoms or anything like that. But when we talk about in the workplace, the top 5 symptoms that women say impact them in the workplace are: 1, the top one is cognitive. So issues around memory loss, forgetting words, forgetting sentences, stopping mid-sentence, names, brain fog. So it's like almost having cotton wool in your head, lack of ability to focus and concentrate. And so women who were doing an amazing job maybe a few years beforehand suddenly are facing these issues. And actually what women tell us is that 3/4 of women cite this as the number one symptom. The second one is fatigue and tiredness, no energy. That's in about 66% of cases. Then there's feeling overwhelmed, 57%. And women at this age are often in the sandwich generation where they maybe have elderly parents or they're caring for elderly people. They may have children or teenagers. They're working full-time or part-time outside the home, trying to run the home, be the perfect wife, the perfect friend, the perfect daughter, the perfect everything. And so there's a lot going on. Roll in the symptoms and the hormone impact. And, you can see why women who didn't feel overwhelmed a few years ago now do. 55% of women said that they felt anxiety. And if you've never felt that before, it can be quite frightening. And women often tell us they think they're going mad. Put in that, lack of sleep, the cognitive issues, and it all becomes, a vicious cycle. And then the last one of the top 5 is actually 46% of women said that hot flushes were what affected them in the workplace. So you can see there's a lot going on, and no wonder women consider stepping back, not going for promotion, cutting back their hours, or potentially leaving work. And, women are going to be working until the pension age of about 68, and therefore there's a lot of time that menopausal women would need to be staying in the workplace. So as employers, we need to consider that. Why is menopause in the workplace important, and what can we do about it? Well, there's a business case for changing the way we think and deal with menopause in the workplace. The first thing is we have a duty of care to our employees through the Health and Safety Act. Secondly, we know that performance can be impacted. And therefore, just like any other health condition, we need to be able to give supports to help women at this stage of life if they have a performance issue. We know there's an issue around talent retention, so keeping women in the workplace, and ultimately talent attraction. So that's really important to an organisation like yourselves. And if the business case or the carrot approach for changing the way we think about menopause isn't convincing, the legislative risk will be. And there's been a significant increase, a triple-fold increase in the number of tribunals that have been taking place in the UK, where menopausal women have taken cases against their employers, and they've taken them on the grounds and won on the cases of gender discrimination, age discrimination, and disability. In Ireland, the legislation and the interpretation around disability is even wider than the UK. So we need to be careful about that. And there's 2 cases pending in Ireland in the tribunals. So what does best practice look like for supporting menopausal women in the workplace? Well, here's sort of 10 things. The first thing we need to do is obviously raise awareness through talks like this. Secondly, you can organise what's called, organisational social support. So the concept of a menopause champion is something that is recommended as best practice. They're people who can be a listening ear, a signposter. They can organise social supports. They can broker conversations between staff and management, and they can organise talks, lunch and learns, coffee mornings, etc. The key to the whole area of menopause support is reasonable accommodation, reasonable adjustments. And they can take any kind of form, from flexible working, working from home, agile working, job sharing, etc. In some roles, of course, that's not possible because there is no working from home. And therefore, employers need to look at the roles through the lens of a menopausal woman, perhaps do risk assessments to see what the risks may be of that individual carrying out that role. You need to look at things like the physical environment, the temperature, maybe access to a desk fan or to aircon or sitting beside a window or whatever. That needs to be looked at. Maybe a restroom or a quiet room for somewhere to go. Access to bathrooms and toilet facilities. Women can experience unexpected bleeding, very heavy flooding. Do you have caught-out packs in your bathrooms available free to women? Changing facilities and so on. Access to cold drinking water. If you're maybe in an office space, you might take all of these things for granted, but those who are on their feet all day, maybe in nursing positions, would actually find that they don't have access to cold water. Uniforms, really important. Is the material right for women, particularly experiencing hot flushes and so on? Have they got enough pieces? Is the fit right? And so on. We need to encourage women to talk more about how they feel. We need to create that open, inclusive environment, that their feelings are normal, but we don't need to judge and we don't need to prescribe. Becoming a supportive line manager is really critical, and management training can be very important for that. And then finally, and ultimately, introduction of a menopause in the workplace policy. So I know you're doing a lot of things around this, and we'll be discussing some case studies and so on in the panel discussion. But it's fantastic that you're moving in the right direction. So I wish you best of luck with your menopausal journey. So now we've heard about the research and how it impacts women in the workplace. So let's actually see what's happening on the ground with you and your colleagues. I'm joined here with 4 panellists, with Emma, with Fiona, with Rosemary, and with Maeve. And we're going to talk about what we see and hear and experience on the ground. So Emma, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everybody, my name is Emma Redmond. I'm the Assistant Director of Nursing in Baltinglass Community Hospital in County Wicklow.
And Fiona?
My name is Fiona Galvin. I am the flu lead and I work in the Health and Wellbeing Department in Dublin, South Kildare, West Wicklow.
And Rosemary?
Hi, I'm Rosemary Plant. I'm Senior Health Promotion Officer in Dublin, South Kildare, West Wicklow.
And last but not least, Maeve?
Hi, my name is Maeve Fitzgerald. I'm the Health and Wellbeing Coordinator in Naas General Hospital.
If we go on to talk about personal experiences of menopause in the workplace, or maybe anything you've heard from colleagues, what type of experiences have you heard about?
Well, for my own experience, just recently, just a work colleague, I actually thought she was sick, and I approached her and I said to her, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Oh, I'm just very tired." And just by chance, I said, "Oh, I'm doing something next week, a podcast, and we're going to talk about the menopause." And she said, "Oh my God," she said. Then it all came out. It all just flowed. She just said she's going through the menopause and she is experiencing sleep fatigue. She's waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and she's to come into work and she's up all day. And I just said to her, I said she had to start minding herself. She needs to take time off, even though she was a manager herself. But it was funny, the whole conversation was only approached when I had mentioned that she wouldn't have said anything.
And how comfortable do you think people are about talking about menopause in general at work? say, Rosemary?
I think it is still a little bit of a taboo subject. You know, I think around mental health we've come a long way, and it is discussed, I think, a lot more. I think, in fairness, Joe Duffy has been given, you know, he has brought the spotlight on it. And, you know, half of our population being female is really something that should have been discussed. It was never discussed with me as a young adult or as a mom, or, you know, even with the GP. There was never a discussion that this is going to happen, and you know, there's ways maybe you can prepare for it, or just, you know, have it as a normal discussion, the same way as you'd talk about a hip replacement, or that it's the normal interaction that we have, both with the medical profession and with our work colleagues.
And if you think about it, it wasn't that many years ago that people wouldn't talk about periods. And now it's normalised. We can talk about periods. We can talk about periods to our teenagers and their friends, and there's not a taboo so much about it, but there's still a big taboo on menopause. And it's being able to approach it and how to approach it. And then, as you said, education is the key for everybody. Everybody needs the education. Even men and women.
Absolutely.
So I think engaging male allies is really, really important.
And through education, really.
100%.
That's it. And once they know, if they actually realise the amount of signs or symptoms that women can actually experience, then it will help them along. Because I do think sometimes when you say menopause, guys are going, ha ha ha, you know, it's like a big joke. It's like, here we go again. So, but if that was really pushed out there, that they were aware that this is what can happen and this is what the woman is experiencing, they would be more considerate, I do believe.
And Fiona, would you think, does anybody ever talk to you in the workplace about this?
Again, I would work in a predominantly female environment, and, you know, so I suppose in our environment we would, as our colleagues, yes, but, you know, it's only supporting each other as such, you know, where we would try to open the door for ourselves to let each other know that we are there as colleagues for each other. But I do think that there needs to be a lot more focus on it, and how, from a management point of view, and the resource, and a lot more resources put into that.
I do think there's a big gap from a line management point of view, that there does need to be a specific training course that's mandatory, so that management can get on board and be a lot more supportive of staff.
Perhaps I think maybe in the future, you know, obviously we have a lot of HSE land courses. Maybe there should be an HSE land course on menopause and have that as mandatory.
Absolutely.
Because we have a lot of other mandatory courses. So then everybody can get they have a basis, a grounding as to what is menopause. And so then they might have a little bit of an understanding as to how to support their colleagues.
I think normalising it in the workplace is a huge part. You know, yes, we do need policies, and it's always good to have policies and procedures to follow, but just that normalisation, that it's just part of normal life and the life cycle of a female in particular, obviously, but men are affected as well. You know, we have partners, husbands, sons, brothers, whatever, and they are affected by menopause. You know, through it as well.
Absolutely. And there's also a danger, you know, if we don't engage male allies in this, that it becomes, you know, another women's issue, and we need to avoid that. So I have to say, we always encourage men to get involved in the conversation. And some of the questions we get are, how can I support my partner, my wife, or family member? And then it's also, how can I support colleagues? And what I always say is that it's really important that, you know, what they say is, you know, what would help you right now? How can I help you right now? And to know what is available and on offer. And if you don't know, maybe take away the requests and consider it with HR or other line managers to find out what's best to do. So Fiona, how do you currently support colleagues going through menopause?
Again, I would have an open door policy with my colleagues, and it's very much of an open communication that if anybody has feels that they feel anyway unwell or need any adjustments to their working environment, or need any breaks or anything like that, that it's more of a flexible working system as such to accommodate somebody who is experiencing any menopausal symptoms. Because I do think that, you know, we offer supports for mental health, as I say, for, you know, for maternity, for everything else. So I do think that we can offer that flexibility as well for staff who have menopausal symptoms. you know, and again, it's a signposting system as well. You know, have they got the information that they require? Have they been to their GP? Is there menopausal support groups around for them? And it possibly, again, is developing menopausal champions within our workforce, you know, where we can signpost people and give them the information that they require to make it more comfortable for them in their workplace.
There is support going on amongst you and your colleagues, and there is some conversation opening up and however, but I think it's that it's in pockets and, you know, you really need to, you know,
More readily available.
Yeah, exactly.
It's nothing formal. It's
Nothing
not formal. It's all
exactly.
helping
It's all,
each other out.
Yeah, exactly. And it sounds very supportive, but wouldn't that be great if that was
across the board, more uniform?
Yeah,
It
exactly.
wouldn't just depend on who your line manager was or what area you worked in.
Exactly.
But a lot of staff actually commented and said the free clinics, menopause clinics, or something with occupational health or the health and wellbeing person in the hospital, but there's a little bit more to be given that way from the HSE.
Yeah.
And another thing as well, maybe if they introduced free HRT, I mean, that's
They're
another
now
big...
starting with free contraception.
Well,
So it is expensive, and it's an expensive time for a lot of people. Their children going to college, especially with cost of living nowadays. I mean, like, it's something which could be and should be done.
Yeah, I have been advocating with the government and ministers and Department of Health and all the rest. And in the UK, they've now introduced a new prescription for HRT, a new prescription cost for HRT, where you only have to pay €18 something, or £18 rather, something a year. So less than £20 a year. And that covers all of your HRT. So I've actually advocated with the government and the Department of Health to say, why don't we do the same as we've done with contraception for menopausal women? Because not everyone has a medical card. It costs a lot of money. My own HRT cost me around 70 quid a month. Now, that's a lot of money. And as you can see, I forgo the haircuts and things like that to be able to pay for the HRT. So yeah, I mean, and I do think that's another on top of everything, because it's expensive to be a woman.
Yeah, it is a barrier, because
It's a significant barrier nowadays, you
Yeah,
know,
it
with
is.
cost of living. Yeah, I mean, you think, do I really need it? Do I?
Yeah.
I think, well, it could sweet shopping or
And women always put themselves last.
I was just about to say that, and naturally women and mums in particular will go, oh, well, the family needs that more, the kids need something.
Shoes or books or...
It'll be put to the end of the list. Yeah.
So Rosemary, tell us a little bit about your personal experience of menopause, and in particular in the workplace.
Yeah, well, I suppose my own story would be that I didn't realise there was anything like perimenopause. I was never informed about it, and like yourself at the start when you said you felt you were fairly well educated, I would think I'm fairly well educated, would have a medical background, and was totally unaware of perimenopause. It's something my GP never discussed with me. I wasn't aware of it. And I actually was full menopause before I realised I was in menopause. So it is something that can sneak up on you as such, particularly when there isn't these open conversations like we're having now. Night sweats would have been a big thing for me, lack of sleep, and as Maeve was saying, you know, coming into work tired, but hiding it really, because you don't want to be seen in the workplace in general as, oh, well, she can't do her job, or, you know, things like that. Even though nobody was saying it to me, I was thinking those things. And that's, I suppose, part of the issue. We have these dialogues going on in our own head, thinking other people are thinking these things about us, because we're not feeling, I suppose, 100%, or think we might be underachieving or things like that. So it would have a knock-on effect both at home and in the workplace. You know, it could be seen maybe as a bit of a death, in that you're losing your fertility, or, you know, you definitely won't be having any more children. You're coming to this stage in your life that's, again, mentally you think you're 21 and you can do everything, and now you're not 21 anymore on paper, but in your head you still are, but now you're in a different phase of your life, and both psychologically and medically you're in a different stage that you do have to come to terms with it. So there is a lot of that to it. So having that support in the workplace, I think, is vital, so that you do feel supported. You mightn't necessarily want a full-blown conversation with your line manager, but just feel supported if you're having an off day. But that's okay. That's normal. It's natural. No more than somebody who's going through 9 months of pregnancy and are out sick on pregnancy leave because there's issues within the pregnancy. menopause, is just another stage in the woman's life. And I suppose, as I said earlier, it needs to be normalised and treated and supported the same way we do for any other
condition.
Yeah.
I went in the presentation, I talked about menopause being like puberty in reverse. And interestingly, what we do as parents is we prepare ourselves, we prepare our children. They learn about it in school. Society knows about teenagers and what to expect. We're given latitude, there's understanding, there's compassion, there's empathy. We often give them a little booklet and sit them down and tell them all about what to expect. And interestingly, we get to menopause, and up until, fairly recently, until the Joe Duffy show, it's been like radio silence. So I think it's that education piece, etc., for everybody in the workplace, in the home, professionally, personally. And the comment that really struck me there was that what we hear back from women is just what you said, is that in their own heads they feel less than, although they may be still doing a great job. And it's that feeling less than that makes them feel, that they're losing their confidence in the workplace. And that's why women, withdraw, leave, don't go for promotion, etc. Whereas actually, others may not even notice. The other thing I'll say though is that, it's really important that just because a woman is over the age of 45, we don't kind of stick a label on her head and say, oh, you're menopausal, perimenopausal, and how's your menopause, or anything like that. It's really important for the individual to broach the subject, I think,
Absolutely. And I suppose as well, in general, for people to realise not everybody gets severe symptoms. Some people get very mild symptoms, some hardly know what's happening to them, so I suppose we don't want to give out the message in general that everybody's going to be, dying with hot flushes and brain fog and not coming to work for 6 months and killing the husband at home and everything else. So symptoms do vary from time to time, from person to person. So it's a continuum. I suppose it's a bit like our own reproductive system. Some people suffer really badly with period pain, and other people get away more likely. So, menopause does have different levels of severity as well.
And I know we actually have a case study from Baltinglass Hospital. So, Emma, tell us about what you've been doing around menopause. How did it all start? What have you put in place? How has it been received? What are the benefits or the lessons for others, other hospitals and other parts of the team?
So our community hospital is small, it's rural. We have about 118 staff in total, with the majority of those being women. And majority of those women are of menopausal age. And then we looked into what can we do for our staff. So we came up with 4 separate days of training, all day training. And we had a nice separate building away from the main hub of the hospital. So it's private. And we said everything which was mentioned in the training day was confidential between us, just so that people felt they could sort of talk about different things and it wasn't going to be spread around the whole community. So we had 2 of these training days last year, and we have another 2 training days coming up in the next couple of weeks. People are talking about it more, and we're working with Menopause Hub to come up with little badges of some description so that staff can wear the badge at work, and then people will recognise the badge and say, okay, they're menopausal champions. So I can actually talk to somebody. Which we were hoping then to have about 60 menopause champions in the hospital. So it's going to be a topic which is going to be free-flowing in the hospital, and then we're going to be working on policies with Loretta and obviously the CHO, and it's just been a great success, and I look forward to helping roll it out in other hospitals as well.
I suppose the last question I have for you is, what lessons can be learned for other hospitals from what you've done?
Well, it's making sure that you have a nice quiet area to have the training, so you can feel comfortable in talking about your own personal menopausal symptoms.
So you're basically saying a safe space, confidential, away from the day-to-day, the hustle and bustle of the daily job or the daily routine or whatever. Okay.
Just so everyone feels safe and secure, and all the information that was being discussed on that day is kept in the room.
Yeah, confidential.
So confidentiality, I think, is very important now to stress when you're having one of these study days, so everyone just feels nice and relaxed.
And the information is correct, up to date, evidence-based, best practice, so that the audience are getting
and having
correct information.
And that it's inclusive.
Inclusive.
That men are, that it is okay for them to say, listen, I would like more information on this, I would like training on this to support my colleagues and support my wife, my family, my, my sisters.
And when I put the flyers around to the different units saying about these menopause study days coming up, I had to make sure that it is inclusive for men.
Yes.
Just because you're a man doesn't mean that you can't come. And even going home with leaflets with all the symptom checkers, having these at hand, just going home, and even if you're leaving it on the kitchen table, and you could have a friend come over for a cup of tea or a glass of wine and pick it up and think, okay, yeah, I have that. And it's just a conversation starter.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic. You're actually getting the support from management, and you're getting then the right support from external. So that's really great.
And I really would benefit,
to be able to implement it in my workplace. That'd be great.
Once one individual is happy to kind of speak about it, whatever, that encourages others to come out and others to come out and so on. And so the other areas I would encourage is that if there's anyone senior in your organisations who are happy to come out and talk about their own experience, that can be a great door opener for others to open up about their conversation, Okay, well, listen, I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much for sharing all the stories from your own work lives with colleagues and so on. I think it's been fascinating, and I think in summary, I suppose the key thing is we need education and awareness for everybody, whether it's colleagues, staff, supervisors, managers. Menopause champions have a role to play, potentially policy development, but that it really needs to be opened up because this is an issue for you and in this profession in particular.
I'd like to thank Loretta and the panellists for a fascinating and an insightful discussion today, and thanks to the Staff Health and Wellbeing team for organising it. Menopause is a stage of life, it's part of our journey, and in the HSE we want to have an open and visible conversation about it in the workplace. And if you're interested in learning more about staff health and wellbeing, our team has a range of resources and supports available.